A 12-year-old German child who was famished broke into an American military base in 1946 with the intention of stealing bread. He was rightfully arrested and even shot by the soldier who caught him. Rather, he took an action that would permanently alter their lives. This is the real-life account of how a single act of kindness transformed adversaries into family. When Klaus Fischer is struck by the flashlight beam, the bread is still warm in his hands. With half a loaf of white bread pressed to his chest like pilfered gold, he freezes in the alley behind the American supply depot in Frankfurt. He's blinded by the light and only sees the gun slung across the soldier's back and the black outline of an American uniform instead of the soldier's face. "It's this. This is how I pass away." The soldier advances. Klaus is unable to move his legs. He keeps thinking of his older brother Henrik's warning. "They will shoot you for taking so much as an apple." Klaus, these are the same creatures that bombed our city. They are merciless. However, since she exchanged her wedding ring for wheat on the black market, Klaus's mother hasn't eaten in 3 days. Greta, his younger sister, sobs herself to sleep every night because her stomach is so empty that it has started to bloat. What option did he have? Klaus can't understand the gruff, guttural sounds the American makes when speaking in English. With dark hair and weary eyes that appear older than his face, the soldier appears to be around 25. With one hand extended, he approaches. Klaus prepares for the punch. Rather, the soldier's fingers lightly, almost cautiously, come into contact with the bread. He doesn't attack or tear it away. He simply glances at the bread, then at Klaus, and finally back at the bread. The soldier says in broken, strongly accented German, "Are you hungry?" Since there is nothing more he can do, Klaus nods. His entire body trembles from fear, the cold, and the 3 pounds he has dropped in just 1 month. Over the next 70 years, Klaus will think about what the American did 1,000 times. He breaks off a slice of bread, gives it back to Klaus, and gestures toward the kitchen door of the depot. "You'd come to work tomorrow morning." Klaus looks at the bread he is holding, then at the soldier, and finally back at the bread. It's a trap. They are ruthless. Before they punish me, they wish to degrade me. However, the soldier is already making his way back toward the depot entrance. He pauses at the entrance, pivots, and utters a final word that Klaus will always remember. A pledge. That bit of bread would sustain Klaus for the next 70 years, even though he was unaware of it at the time. The following morning, Klaus does not visit the depot. 3 families are jammed in half of a demolished building in the Norden neighborhood, and he sits in the corner of their common room. He carefully divides the bread into 3 pieces, one for Greta, one for Mama, and one for himself. For the first time in months, he tastes actual flour as he eats carefully. No one inquires as to where the food comes from, but the other families are eyeing their portions with hunger. It was a ruse. He was making fun of me. They will be waiting to take me into custody if I return. But by nightfall, the bread runs out. Greta is wailing once more, the feeble, worn-out sound of a body surrendering. Klaus can't stop picturing the soldier's face. It's not disgusted or angry, simply worn out and possibly depressed. "You arrive to work tomorrow." Klaus had learned to anticipate creatures. This is the cost of their Jewish master's retaliation. Every statement had been believed by Klaus. While Klaus and his family were gathered in a bunker 4 blocks away, his father had perished in the firebombing of March 1944, crushed by debris. Klaus, then 11 years old, had used his wedding ring to help identify his body. They spent their last year surviving on potato peels and forage plants when his mother relocated them to her sister's farm outside of Wiesbaden. In March 1945, his 62-year-old uncle, armed with a hunting rifle and confronting American tanks, marched off with the People's Militia. His body was never located. Klaus, Greta, and his mother had hidden in the root cellar when the Americans arrived. waiting for the cries Herr Vogel had promised. But there were no screams. Rather, there was silence, followed by English-speaking voices. And when his mother came out, she saw American soldiers establishing a field hospital in the town square, tending to German citizens as well as their own injured. Klaus had not been sure how to interpret it. In July 1945, they went back to the rubble of Frankfurt. Their apartment complex had vanished, leaving only twisted metal and bricks, memories reduced to ashes. And the appetite ... Food became an addiction, a dream, a fairy tale from a bygone era due to a persistent, ravenous hunger. Early in 1946, the American depot opened in their neighborhood. From blocks away, Klaus could smell the warehouses full of food, real bread, butter, and yeast items that had been in his grandmother's kitchen before the war. It made him insane. He had attempted theft twice previously, the first time when a British soldier boxed his ears and made him flee, and the second time when he dropped a tin of beans and watched it split over the cobblestones while sobbing in exasperation. He was so certain that he had finally figured it out last night that he ran right into Louisville, Kentucky, Private James Crawford. The following morning, Klaus leaves. This time, in the daytime, he approaches the depot from the front, his heart pounding so fiercely that he fears it may break his ribs. The enormous, red-haired, freckled American guard at the gate stares down at him and speaks in English. Klaus stammers, "Ihe. Soldier yesterday. Work," he said. Klaus flinches as the guard waves him through and gestures toward the kitchen building with a loud laugh. Everyone is involved. They have been holding out. However, the same soldier from the previous night is standing at a steel counter chopping vegetables with a knife that looks like it might cut Klaus in half when Klaus pushes open the kitchen door. When Private Crawford looks up, a genuine smile that reaches his eyes appears on his face. In his terrible German, he says, "You came. Well done, boy." Rigid in the doorway, Klaus is prepared to flee. Crawford calmly and purposefully places the knife down so Klaus can see it is no longer in his grasp. He approaches a shelf, takes down an adult-sized apron that would drown Klaus, and extends it. Crawford points to the potatoes stacked on the counter and says, "You work. You consume food. All right? Sure." Klaus remains still, unable to move. Contradictions are screaming from his brain. He is grinning, but he is laying a trap. Children are tortured by them. However, he set the knife down. "He fed me yesterday, but Americans are monsters." Crawford lets out a sigh. He grabs one of the potatoes, takes out a peeler, and performs the steps in dramatic slow motion. Peel, rinse, and cut. Cut, rinse, and peel. He moves the peeler in Klaus' direction across the counter. "You make an effort. Show me." As Klaus picks up the peeler, his hands tremble. He has peeled thousands of potatoes in his life for the past 2 years. They have made up the majority of his diet, but he falters in front of Crawford. The peeler slips. On his thumb, a small line of blood forms. It recoils, anticipating ridicule for his weakness and punishment for his awkwardness. "Ah, hell," is Crawford's gentle sound, and he moves swiftly without striking. He reaches for Klaus's hand after grabbing a fresh handkerchief and running it under the faucet. Klaus instinctively withdraws. Crawford pauses, extends the cloth, and stays put. "It's all right," he murmurs. "I'll check. I assist. Not, I give an order. I assist. Not, you must." Klaus holds out his hand slowly, very slowly. Crawford gently encircles Klaus's thumb with the handkerchief, putting just enough pressure to halt the flow. His hands are not as gentle as Klaus had anticipated from Americans who, according to what he'd been told, lived in luxury while Germans starved. Instead, they are heated and calloused from work. Crawford says, "There. All right. Now give it another go. Take your time. I provide you a better demonstration." Once more, he stands next to Klaus and guides his hands without pushing them. Cut, rinse, and peel. Cut, rinse, and peel. Crawford gives Klaus a quick, solid smack on the shoulder after he successfully finishes his first potato. Wow, excellent. Klaus blinks away tears he does not comprehend. They spend an hour working silently. Crawford doesn't initiate conversation or posing queries. He simply works alongside Klaus, sometimes correcting his technique. He once brought over a seat when he saw that Klaus was having trouble getting to the counter comfortably. Crawford takes out 2 plates at noon. He fills both with the stew he has been making, which is heavy with vegetables and meat, more food than Klaus has seen in one location since 1944. In front of Klaus, he places 1 plate. They share meals. The meat is thick, tender, and swimming in sauce that seeps into the bread, unlike anything Klaus can recall. Crawford sheds tears from a brand new loaf. In an attempt to keep some dignity, Klaus eats carefully, but his body betrays him. With sauce trickling down his chin, he is stuffing food into his mouth. Crawford simply moves his own bread across the table, so Klaus can wipe up the remaining gravy without laughing or saying anything. When Klaus looks up at last, tears fall from his eyes. He's not sure if this is due to appreciation, shame, or perplexity. Crawford is observing him with a compassionate look that Klaus has never seen on the face of an adult who is not his mother. "You have relatives?" Crawford asks cautiously. "Brother, sister, father, mother, sister," Klaus murmurs. "Minimal. 6 years." After giving a slow nod, Crawford gets up and moves for the supply closet. He takes out a canvas bag and carefully fills it with items worth more than his mother's wedding ring, including a loaf of bread, a tin of meat, a jar of preserves, and a small sack of flour. These items would cost a month's worth of rations on the black market. He extends the bag. Klaus looks at the bag, then back at him. "Why? Why are you acting in this way?" Crawford says, "For your family. Come tomorrow and go back to work." "You bring meals home from work every day." "Yes, but why?" Before Klaus can stop them, they start speaking in German. He's overcome with warmth. Something painful moves like a shadow across Crawford's face. He takes out a faded, wrinkled snapshot from his pocket. He displays it to Klaus, showing a youngster, perhaps 8 years old, and a woman with black hair grinning at the camera. "My spouse," Crawford murmurs. "Tommy, my son. I was your sister's age when I departed for the war." He runs his finger over the boy's face. "I hope someone helps my Tommy if he is hungry and needs to steal food. Someone is compassionate." "Yes," Klaus murmurs as he takes the bundle in shaky hands. "Dank," he says. Crawford grinned. "Tomorrow. You arrive tomorrow." The weight of the bag is more priceless than gold, and Klaus clutches it to his bosom as he rushes home. But as he rushes through Frankfurt's devastated streets, it is not the food that brings him to tears. It is a picture of Tommy, a young child, and the way Crawford's voice broke when he murmured, "I hope someone is kind." The following day, and the day after that, Klaus returns. He is initially still waiting for the trap to open. He works fast and effectively, hardly saying anything more than to follow directions. As soon as he is permitted to leave, he grabs the meal that Crawford hands him. He doesn't ask questions or maintain prolonged eye contact. Continue to be helpful. Don't give him an excuse to reconsider. Crawford, however, is reliable. The same routine every day. Work, share a meal, and bring food home. Crawford also talks to him every day, initially about little topics like the weather and his job. Crawford laughs at his own awful accent as he learns basic German phrases. Stories about Kentucky that don't make sense to Klaus include horses racing in circles for fun and something called bluegrass. Klaus begins to arrive earlier and stays later. He becomes so adept at the routine that Crawford can let go and rely on Klaus to do the job. Before Crawford asks, he pulls out the necessary materials. Stations prepared for the day's cooking, utensils cleaned and ready. "What is this?" he asks, pointing to an unfamiliar vegetable. "How is this made?" As Klaus watches Crawford cook dishes he has never seen, Crawford patiently responds, frequently adding dramatic pantomime to his terrible German, which causes Klaus to grin for the first time in more than a year. Klaus comes back every morning for 2 weeks. A sergeant then barges into the kitchen one day. While they are working, a tall soldier with sergeant stripes walks in and begins speaking quickly in English while pointing to Klaus. Klaus becomes inflexible. It's this. Someone took notice. A complaint was made. The sergeant speaks louder. Crawford gets up to confront it. They quarrel. Despite his inability to grasp the words, Klaus can tell from the tone. The door is indicated by the sergeant. Crawford forms a barrier with his body as he moves between Klaus and the sergeant. At last, the sergeant raises his hands and rushes out. With a flushed face, Crawford turns to confront Klaus. "Are you all right?" he inquires. Klaus has trouble pronouncing words in German. "I say he rules." Crawford gestures dismissively. "You remain. This is where you work." "All right. You Klaus has a very little voice." "You stood up for me?" Crawford seemed taken aback. "Obviously. You are a productive worker. You're a good child." Klaus feels a crack in his chest. He is 12 years old. He has witnessed his city burn down, endured a battle, and stolen to save his sister. He is currently being defended against his own sergeant by an American soldier who calls him a good child. They were lying to me about everything. His reality shatters and transforms into something unrecognizable as the realization dawns on him all at once, just like when the firebomb struck his building. His quiet is misinterpreted by Crawford as dread. "Hey, hello. It's all right. Here, you are secure. I swear. All right?" Klaus murmurs. He would subsequently claim that he ceased being terrified after the sergeant's visit. However, he felt protected that morning as he stood in that kitchen with Crawford's hand on his shoulder, something he hadn't felt since before his father passed away. A group of German men who were once soldiers. Klaus can identify them by their demeanor, even though they are dressed in civilian clothes, stand outside the depot gate one morning in early May and yell derogatory remarks like, "Traitor youngster, a pet from America. For scraps, you betray your people." Klaus's stomach burns with shame. However, Crawford's hand touches his shoulder. Crawford firmly asserts, "They are wrong. You are not a betrayer. You make it through. You support your family. That is not a sign of shame. That is courageous." Crawford lowers himself to Klaus's eye level. The war is over. Germany was defeated. War does not make me joyful. The conflict does not make you joyful. However, the fight is now finished. We are now, after struggling to pronounce the term, he uses his hands to create a constructing gesture. We are now building once more, collectively. Indeed. They claim that Americans are ... Klaus stops himself as the phrases from his training begin to come out. Gangsters are Americans. Americans are puppets of the Jewish people. Americans are ... say. What? Crawford softly prods. Klaus gives a headshake. Not at all. They're mistaken. He inhales. You are not what they claim. Crawford has a dejected smile. Not all of us are good. A few American soldiers, Klaus perceives his gesture as unkind. Some are nice, some are bad. Like everyone else, including Germans. Some are good, and some are bad. Yes, Klaus murmurs. It's the most straightforward thing anyone has ever spoken to him, and everything is unraveled. Some are bad, and some are good. Like everyone else, not monsters, not demons, not a single, all-encompassing force of evil coming to destroy Germany. Only individuals. During lunch, Klaus is taught English by Crawford's friend. Klaus is yearning to comprehend and is ravenous for it. His tiny brain picks up the new language more quickly than Crawford can comprehend, and he is also skilled at it. Crawford delivers paperwork for the German youth school set up by the occupying authorities in late May. The majority of it has already been completed by him. You go to school in the afternoon after working in the morning. I spoke with your mom. Describe. All right? But education is crucial, Crawford maintains. You are intelligent. Education is necessary for you. Kitchen job cannot be done indefinitely. Must have a future. Klaus feels pain in his eyes. You want me to go? No, Crawford says with a terrified expression. No, I wish you a happy life. Big life. Better than... He points to the ruins outside, the kitchen, and the depot. Klaus tells his mother everything that evening, including the employment, the school forms, Crawford, and the theft. He anticipates being angry for working with the occupiers, lying, and endangering himself. Rather, Anna Fisher breaks down in tears. She draws Klaus into her embrace. He says, Danke. Danke, since she is so thin now that he can feel every bone. She goes to meet Crawford with him the following morning. She's dressed in her finest gown, which is clean but faded and patched. In an attempt to maintain her dignity in front of the American who has been feeding her kids, she groomed her hair. Your son, very good worker, very smart, Crawford says slowly in his limited German as he gives her a polite handshake. You've got a good boy. Anna's voice trembles. I am unable to pay you. I have nothing to do. Crawford softly interrupts. No pay needed. He is employed. I eat. That's compensation. He extends a bigger than normal bag that contains provisions for her and her family, including wheat, sugar, canned milk, and coffee. Anna's hands shake as she takes the bag. Then, before Crawford can respond, she gives him a heartfelt kiss on the hand, a gesture she has only witnessed in church. I'm grateful. I'm grateful. Crawford has tears in his eyes. Instead, he carefully removes his hand and extends a firm, courteous, and equal handshake. You're welcome, he replies. Your son is a good boy. You are proud of him. Anna takes Klaus's hand on the way home, something she hasn't done since he was a little child. This man, this American, he is a good man, she murmurs. Yes, says Klaus. They tell us lies about everything. She stops moving and gives him a direct look. Klaus, you have to keep this in mind. You have to keep in mind that people are lying when they tell you that someone is your adversary, that you should despise strangers, or that the world is straightforward. Do you comprehend? Klaus gives a nod. Mama, I get it. She squeezes his hand and murmurs. Good. Now you take use of this opportunity to return to school, this employment, this food, and this present. You create a fulfilling life that your father would be proud of. I will, Klaus swears. I will. In August 1946, Crawford rotated home. It wasn't until Crawford informed him that morning, his expression intentionally neutral, that Klaus realized it was his last day. Tomorrow, I return to America. My son, let's go back to my wife. But you continue, he said, pointing to Klaus, the kitchen where he now worked confidently, and the school books Klaus brought to read during downtime. You're strong now. You have a future. Despite being 12 and attempting to act like a man, Klaus wanted to cry. His English was still halting, but it had improved. I don't forget. My life and the lives of my family were saved by you. Crawford gave a hard shake of his head. No, your life is saved by you. You had the courage to return on the second day. You're brave enough to have faith. He found it difficult to speak. I just make an effort to be nice. That's all. He produced an envelope. There was a recommendation letter inside, written in meticulous English, and characterizing Klaus as a dependable, diligent, and bright young man fit for any future job. Crawford's Kentucky address was at the bottom. Crawford said, You write me. Let me know when you graduate from school. Tell me about your life. All right, Klaus muttered. The same formal handshake between equals that Crawford had given Klaus's mother was exchanged between them. 43 years later, Klaus would return to Kentucky with that picture. Klaus Fischer went to the technical college after attending the occupation school. He went on to become an electrical engineer and worked on rebuilding Frankfurt's infrastructure. He wrote his first letter to Crawford in 1952, informing him of his graduation, Greta's enrollment in school, and his mother's return to health and employment as a seamstress. Crawford responded with a picture of himself and Tommy grinning. Tommy was a teenager now. Crawford wrote, "I told him about you," referring to the courageous youngster who returned despite his fear. One day, he hopes to meet you. For 47 years, they corresponded. In order to meet the guy who had transformed his life, Klaus traveled to Kentucky once in 1989 with his own 2 girls. Even though Crawford was retired and had gray hair, he had never given up cooking. He prepared the same stew, heavy with meat and vegetables and accompanied by fresh bread, for Klaus and his daughters as he had done on the first day. They chuckled as Klaus said, "It's still the best food I've ever tasted." Klaus took a plane back to Kentucky for Crawford as funeral in 1993. He described a night in 1946 when a hungry youngster attempted to steal bread and discovered something more important than food in front of the assembled family and friends, the majority of whom were strangers. "He restored my humanity," Klaus remarked, his youthful accent still audible despite his improved English. "He gave me dignity when I expected punishment, and everything I had been taught was cruelty. He assigned me a task. I had hope because of him. He did not spot an enemy child or a German child. He fed the youngster after noticing that he was hungry." The kindness of this one individual. Do you recall the picture of Tommy taken by Crawford? Klaus had carried that picture with him for many years. Following the service, Klaus gave Crawford's family a hug. He remarked, "Dad told me stories about you my entire life. You taught him something too," he remarked. It goes beyond simple acts of generosity. Sometimes it's as simple as sharing your bread with someone who is hungry. Do you recall the picture of Tommy taken by Crawford? After returning to Germany, Klaus spoke at schools for the following 10 years about the occupied era, reconciliation, and the value of finding the humanity in those you have been taught to fear. He would tell students, "I was taught that Americans were monsters. Everything I had been taught broke apart when I met one American soldier. Not because he spoke about peace, but rather because he was compassionate when he had every right not to be." At the age of 82, Klaus Fischer passed away in 2016. His services to German-American friendship societies, his family, and his engineering career were all highlighted in his obituary. However, his children discovered a box in his desk that held all of Crawford's correspondence, a picture of Tommy from that first day in the kitchen, and a piece of paper that had become mushy from folding and unfolding. It was Crawford's 1946 recommendation letter, written in meticulous English. "The day I learned that kindness is stronger than hate," was written by Klaus in German at the bottom in faded pencil. The collection was given by his daughters to the German Historical Museum in Berlin, where it is currently on display as part of a post-war exhibition. As they stand in front of the exhibit, they read the letters, examine the pictures, and learn about a soldier who made the compassionate decision and a boy who stole bread. One line from the collection's last letter, which Klaus wrote to Crawford's widow following his death, is frequently cited by museum curators. "I learned from your spouse that we are characterized by the people we choose to assist rather than the people we are instructed to despise. This is the only legacy worth leaving and the only lesson worth imparting. Inform your kids and grandkids. Feed anyone you see who is hungry. When you witness someone in fear, give them comfort. When you witness someone who anticipates cruelty, show them compassion instead. This is how we create a better world. One person, one moment, one decision at a time, rather than with lofty proclamations." Perhaps 20 cents in US dollars were spent on the bread Klaus stole that evening in 1946. The life that resulted from it was priceless.